I want you to just check your calendar really quickly. Today is April 5, 2026.
Time is flying.
It really is, which means we are less than 4 months away from August 2, 2026.
Big bang.
Exactly. What industry insiders have been calling the Big Bang for AI regulation in Europe, because that is when the EU AI Act reaches full uncompromising enforcement. So I want to start this deep dive with a very grounded, very serious question.
Okay, let's hear it.
If your company's AI made a critical decision today, say it denied a commercial loan or, flagged a vendor for noncompliance, and European regulators knocked on your door tomorrow asking exactly how the machine made that decision, could you trace the logic?
Oh, wow.
Right. Or would you be staring down the barrel of a 30 million euro fine?
Yeah, it is the ultimate stress test for enterprise leadership right now.
Yeah.
And for a significant portion of companies, they absolutely cannot answer that question confidently.
Right at all.
It's the reality they are actively scrambling to address because the technology has just completely outpaced their internal governance.
And that tension right there, that's exactly our mission today. We got our hands on a really comprehensive roadmap from AetherLink, the Dutch AI consulting firm.
Right, highly respected in that space.
Yeah, and it outlines precisely how European enterprises, specifically in heavy regulatory hubs like Den Haag, are navigating this incredibly narrow bridge. They're trying to shift from basic AI tools to fully autonomous AI agents, right as this massive regulatory guillotine is about to drop.
Well, and for anyone evaluating AI adoption, whether you are, a CTO architecting the system or a developer building the pipelines or even a business leader funding it, you really have to understand the fundamental paradigm shift that's driving this urgency.
Okay, break that down for us.
The era of the traditional chatbot is over.
Yeah.
It's done. We are moving into the era of what they call digital colleagues.
Digital colleagues.
Yeah, and to put some concrete numbers to this, Gartner's latest forecast indicates that by the end of this year, autonomous AI agents will handle 15 to 20% of enterprise-critical decisions.
Wow.
Completely without any human oversight.
That acceleration is just difficult to wrap your head around because, just 2 years ago, right? In 2024, that number was sitting at roughly 2%.
Exactly.
So we were talking about an order of magnitude leap in machine autonomy inside the corporate structure in just a couple of years.
But, and this is the key, that acceleration is hitting a wall. You have this unprecedented automation capability colliding directly with a really strict new regulatory framework.
The EU AI Act.
Right. McKinsey's data highlights the bottleneck perfectly. Globally, 72% of enterprises have adopted some form of generative AI. However, only 28% have actually pushed autonomous agents into a production environment.
Which makes sense because the gap between playing with the technology in a sandbox and actually trusting it to run your business is massive.
It's a huge leap.
And the AetherLink roadmap makes it really clear that the hesitation comes down to the architectural leap between a chatbot and a digital colleague. We need a better framework than just saying, oh, it's smarter software.
Yeah, that doesn't really capture it.
No, it doesn't. Think about a calculator versus a fully autonomous self-driving car. You punch an equation into a calculator, you get an output. It requires your continuous input to function. A chatbot operates the exact same way, like an intern who only fetches files when you specifically ask.
Right, a prompt and a response.
Exactly. But a digital colleague is the self-driving car. It's the seasoned project manager. You give it a destination, like a strategic goal, and it steers, hits the brakes, navigates obstacles, and recalibrates its route entirely on its own.
And that structural difference, that autonomy, is exactly where the compliance risk lives. The AetherLink framework breaks this leap into 3 technical pillars. First, there's agency.
Okay, agency.
Right. Unlike the calculator waiting for a keystroke, these digital colleagues plan multi-step workflows. They evaluate a goal, break it into a sequence of actions, and execute them independently.
So they aren't waiting for us to tell them the next step.
Exactly. Second, there is reasoning. They use chain of thought processing. So if they hit a roadblock in, say, a financial forecast, they don't just fail and return an error code.
They don't just crash.
No, they logically deduce an alternative path to the data.
Which means they're maintaining context over time, which is something early language models simply could not do. They just forget what you were talking about.
Right, exactly. And the third pillar is integration. A chatbot usually sits in an isolated browser window, right? But a digital colleague operates natively inside your core enterprise systems.
It's in the plumbing.
Yes. It is querying your customer relationship management software, your CRM pulling client history, cross-referencing it with your enterprise resource planning software, checking inventory, and then drafting a strategy.
All on its own.
It weaves disparate corporate databases together without a human acting as the intermediary.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second because this sounds like a developer's dream but a legal team's absolute nightmare.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, if European enterprises are granting software agency to independently rummage through highly sensitive financial or like maritime commerce databases in a hub like Den Haag, aren't they just installing a massive liability?
It definitely feels that way.
Especially with the EU AI Act taking effect in August, letting an AI act on its own across our databases seems like the exact opposite of what the regulators want.
It does seem counterintuitive, I know, which is why the governance models have to fundamentally change. You cannot deploy a digital colleague using the same security protocols you used for a chatbot.
Right.
The EU AI Act is heavily anchored around a high-risk classification system.
High risk. Okay.
Yeah. If your AI touches employment decisions, financial services, law enforcement support, or critical infrastructure, it is high risk. For the maritime and financial firms operating out of Den Haag, practically every meaningful autonomous agent falls into this category.
So if a system is classified as high risk, what is the actual mechanical burden on the enterprise? Like, what do they actually have to build before August 2nd?
Well, the primary hurdle is the FRIA.
The FRIA.
Yeah, the Fundamental Rights Impact Assessment. Before an agent ever goes live, the enterprise must mathematically and procedurally prove the model won't exhibit bias, discriminate, or violate basic rights.
Oh, wow. Prove it mathematically.
Yes. You have to document the training data provenance and the testing methodologies. But it goes beyond just the initial launch. You are required to maintain human reviewable audit trails.
Meaning, if the agent denies a vendor contract, it can't just output request denied.
Correct. It must log its exact chain of thought reasoning, citing the specific data points in the CRM or the compliance database that led to the denial.
So you can literally read its mind.
Exactly. And, crucially, that log must be readable by a human auditor, not just a string of machine code. And finally, the regulation mandates circuit breaker mechanisms.
Okay, the roadmap mentions circuit breakers, but how does that actually function in a software environment? I mean, it's not a physical switch on a wall.
No, it's driven by programmatic confidence thresholds.
Okay.
Let's say a digital colleague is reviewing a really complex international loan application. The model is constantly calculating its probabilistic certainty regarding the decision. The enterprise establishes a strict rule. If the agent's confidence drops below, say, 92%, the circuit trips.
Oh, I see.
The AI instantly freezes the workflow and routes the entire file, along with its partial analysis, to a human compliance officer's dashboard. The machine basically stops itself before making a low-confidence, high-risk decision.
Knowing that the penalty for failing to implement these FRIAs, audit trails, and circuit breakers is up to 30 million euros or 6% of global revenue, I mean, it changes the entire calculus of AI adoption.
It really does.
It's no longer just an IT project. It's a board-level existential risk.
This is exactly why AetherLink's consultancy arm, EtherMind, is aggressively advising enterprises to initiate a 6 to 8 week readiness assessment immediately.
Because August is right around the corner.
Right. You have to map the technical gaps between your current AI pilots and these strict regulatory mandates, because building a programmatic circuit breaker into an existing model, that takes significant engineering time.
But wait, this strict EU regulation creates a massive geographical trap, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, you can build the most compliant AI circuit breakers in the world, but if that AI ships European financial data to a server in California to do its thinking, you've just violated the data residency rules anyway. How are enterprises solving the physical location of the data?
Yes. This brings us to the sovereign AI infrastructure dilemma. The EU AI Act places an enormous premium on data residency and sovereignty.
Right.
If an enterprise in Den Haag is processing European commercial data, sending that data across the Atlantic to be analyzed by a US-based foundational model creates an unacceptable compliance risk, regardless of how secure the connection is.
Okay, so the AetherLink roadmap actually cites a Forrester survey on this that is genuinely surprising to me. 67% of European enterprises are actively prioritizing sovereign infrastructure for their AI deployments.
Yes.
And they are doing this even if it means accepting a 15 to 20% performance trade-off compared to utilizing the leading US-based systems. I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If I'm a CTO and I intentionally architect a system that is 20% slower or, less capable than my global competitors, Aren't I just guaranteeing we lose the efficiency race to American or Asian companies?
It is a calculated trade-off, definitely, but it is the only viable path to avoid catastrophic regulatory friction. The calculation is that a slightly slower, legally impenetrable system is vastly superior to a blazingly fast system that just gets shut down by regulators on day one.
That's a fair point. You can't win a race if your car gets impounded.
Exactly. Furthermore, these enterprises are terrified of vendor lock-in with massive overseas cloud providers. To navigate this, they are adopting sophisticated hybrid cloud architectures.
Okay, walk us through the mechanics of that hybrid setup. How do they balance the need for raw compute power with the demand for data sovereignty?
So the architecture works by bifurcating the data storage from the AI inference. Your highly sensitive, personally identifiable information, the PII remains locked safely in your on-premises servers.
Safe and sound in Europe.
Right. But the actual brain doing the reasoning, the AI model, is provided by European entities like Mistral AI or OpenEU initiatives. Through secure API gateways, the on-premise system sends anonymized or encrypted tokens to the European foundational model.
Just tokens, no actual names or numbers?
Exactly. The model performs the complex reasoning, sends the logic back, and your internal servers reassociate that logic with the sensitive client data behind your own firewall.
Okay, so the proprietary data never actually feeds the external AI model, and the processing never leaves the continent. You are sacrificing a fraction of a second in latency to ensure total legal sovereignty.
Exactly. You maintain robust competitive performance, you avoid U.S. vendor lock-in, and you comply flawlessly with the data residency mandates.
All right, let's move from the theoretical architecture into a practical application, because the roadmap provides a case study out of Den Haag that just completely reframes how this technology impacts the bottom line.
I love this case study.
Yeah, it's wild. We are looking at a major financial firm with 15 billion euros under management.
And given the sector and the assets, every piece of software they deploy is absolutely scrutinized under that high-risk classification.
Without question. So their primary operational bottleneck was anti-money laundering and know your customer validation, AML and KYC.
Classic bottleneck.
Right. They had an army of 40 full-time analysts grinding through legacy, rule-based software systems. The critical issue was that their false positive rate was sitting at over 12%.
Ow.
Meaning the human analysts were spending thousands of hours manually reviewing perfectly legal, routine transactions that the old software stubbornly flagged as suspicious.
Which is just a massive drain on human capital and operational velocity.
Completely. So they completely stripped out the rule-based system and replaced it with a multi-agent AI architecture. They didn't just deploy a single monolithic AI model, they orchestrated a team of specialized digital colleagues.
The literal digital workforce.
Yes. First, they built a document AI agent. Its sole function was to ingest unstructured onboarding paperwork PDFs, scanned passports, corporate charters, and just structure that data. It then passed that clean data to a compliance reasoning agent.
And that handoff is crucial. The reasoning agent doesn't have to parse a messy PDF. It receives a structured data package, allowing it to focus entirely on cross-referencing the client against global sanctions lists and behavioral risk baselines.
Precisely. And if the reasoning agent found a discrepancy, it passed its findings to a third entity, the escalation agent. The escalation agent synthesized the entire investigation into a cohesive report and routed it to a human compliance officer's dashboard.
Beautiful architecture.
The performance metrics post-deployment are staggering. The processing time for a full KYC validation dropped from 72 hours down to just 4 hours.
But the most significant metric isn't the speed, right? It is the accuracy.
Yes, that 12% false positive rate plummeted to 1.8%.
Wow, 1.8%.
Yeah. By implementing an AI that could utilize chain-of-thought reasoning rather than rigid rules, they fundamentally upgraded the accuracy of the firm. They reduced their full-time equivalent headcount on this specific task from 40 down to 18.
Incredible.
In the first year alone, they realized 2.1 million euros in operational savings. They achieved a 340% return on investment in 18 months.
That is huge.
And critically, they eliminated 8.7 million euros in estimated sanctions violation exposure.
Well, and the underlying insight in this case study is how they achieved that performance.
Yeah.
It wasn't because they utilized the largest language model available. The critical factor was that they architected this multi-agent system to be fully compliant with Article 6 of the EU AI Act from the very beginning.
Article 6 being the specific mandate for transparent record keeping and data governance, right?
Yes. They engineered complete decision traceability. Every single time the compliance reasoning agent flagged a transaction or cleared one, it meticulously logged its chain of thought reasoning into a secure, immutable database.
Oh, so the humans could see everything.
Exactly. When the human analysts logged in, they didn't have to guess why the AI escalated a file. The entire logic tree was presented right to them. The strict governance actually accelerated the human-in-the-loop review process.
That flips the conventional wisdom completely. I mean, we usually assume regulation slows innovation down. But in this architecture, because the enterprise forced the AI to transparently log its reasoning, the human workers actually trusted the output. Strict governance generated operational speed.
It creates a foundation of trust. If the human operators know the audit trails are flawless and the circuit breakers will catch anomalies, they allow the automated system to process vast amounts of data without second-guessing every output.
But this introduces the final and perhaps most difficult challenge outlined in the AetherLink roadmap. Taking a beautifully architected system of 3 agents operating in a single compliance department and trying to scale that across a multinational enterprise.
Right, scaling is where it gets messy.
How do you go from a successful pilot program to 20 or 50 production agents without the entire architecture just collapsing?
Well, scaling autonomous agents introduces entirely new categories of failure. The first wall enterprises hit is multi-agent resource contention.
What does that mean exactly?
So if you deploy an agent in HR, another in supply chain, and 3 in finance, and they're all simultaneously querying your central ERP database at machine speed, you will hit API rate limits.
Oh, they essentially spam the system.
Yes, the agents will lock each other out of the database, and the entire corporate infrastructure grinds to a halt. It requires really sophisticated centralized orchestration. But the more dangerous issue is compliance drift.
Right, because if the finance department updates the parameters on their specific agent based on a new tax regulation, but the HR department leaves their agent running on last year's protocols, your company's brain is suddenly fragmented.
Exactly.
How do enterprises prevent that architectural drift?
The only proven methodology is establishing an AI Center of Excellence, or a COE. You just cannot allow individual departments to deploy autonomous agents in silos. A COE creates a centralized platform for deployment and requires a dedicated AI lead architecture role to enforce global standards.
Centralized control.
Yes, and the data strongly supports this approach. A recent Deloitte survey found that enterprises with mature COEs deploy their AI agents 3.2 times faster than their decentralized peers, and they operate with 42% less compliance risk.
The roadmap details a specific function of the COE called automated knowledge validation, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, that's critical.
If your digital colleagues are constantly reasoning based on internal company policies, the COE has to manage how those models learn. You use retrieval augmented generation, or RA, to feed the models your company data. But when the employee handbook or the compliance guidelines are updated, the COE must have automated pipelines that instantly flush the old vectors from the AI's memory and validate the new data.
Right, you have to overwrite the old rules.
Yeah. Otherwise, your agent is making autonomous decisions in 2026 based on a 2024 policy document.
And a confidently wrong autonomous agent operating at machine speed across your enterprise systems is the exact mechanism that generates a €30 million regulatory fine. The COE ensures that the ground truth the models rely on is universally updated and mathematically validated.
Which brings us full circle to the August 2nd deadline. As we distill all of this complex architecture and regulatory pressure down, what is your #1 takeaway from the AetherLink roadmap?
For me, the primary takeaway is that we need a complete shift in corporate mindset regarding regulation. Governance is not a roadblock. When implemented at the architectural level, it is your ultimate competitive advantage.
It's an enabler.
Exactly. That Den Haag financial firm proved it. By building compliance-centric sovereign infrastructure from day one, by engineering the audit trails and the circuit breakers directly into the multi-agent system, they achieved a 340% ROI. The enterprises that treat the EU AI Act as a blueprint for robust engineering rather than a legal nuisance are the ones who will scale successfully.
That is a really powerful perspective. For me, the standout realization is the behavioral shift of the system. Think about your own compliance or operations team right now. How many hours are they spending chasing false positives that a multi-agent system could filter out before they even log in?
Too many hours, honestly.
Right. The sheer drop in false positives in that case study, from 12% down to 1.8%, proves that moving from a rules-based system to an autonomous reasoning agent isn't just a labor-saving tactic. It is a fundamental upgrade to the cognitive accuracy of the enterprise. You aren't just doing the same work faster. The enterprise itself is making smarter, cleaner decisions.
It is a qualitative evolution of the business model itself. And if I can leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to consider, as we count down to this August 2026 deadline.
Please do.
We've spent this entire deep dive analyzing how an enterprise governs its own internal digital colleagues. But as these autonomous agents scale globally across different supply chains, we are rapidly approaching a reality of machine-to-machine interaction.
AI negotiating directly with AI.
Exactly. Imagine your company's highly governed, EU-compliant AI agent needs to negotiate a complex logistics contract with your vendor's AI agent. But that vendor is based in a jurisdiction with entirely different, perhaps much looser regulatory guardrails.
Oh, wow.
How do differing governance models interact, resolve conflicts, and establish trust in a purely machine-to-machine negotiation that happens in milliseconds? That is the immediate next frontier of enterprise architecture.
That fundamentally changes the risk profile. I mean, we are just barely establishing the architecture to control our own digital colleagues, and the next challenge is figuring out how they govern themselves when interacting with external machines.
It's a brave new world.
It really is. Well, that certainly gives us all plenty to prepare for as the clock ticks down to August 2nd. For more AI insights, visit etherlink.ai.